Welcome back to the SME Souk Podcast. Joining me today is His Excellency Khalifa Al Hajeri, CEO of the Emirates Growth Fund. Under his leadership, the fund provides critical growth capital to mid-sized UAE companies navigating the tough gap between early startup funding and large-scale private equity. His Excellency has turned the platform into a powerful launchpad, giving these businesses the institutional backing they need to expand globally. So join me for today's episode of the SME Souk Podcast. Your Excellency, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Tom.
No
Look
problem.
forward to it.
So you've had nearly 2 decades of experience in investing. What drew you to investments?
I didn't start off thinking that I was going to be in investments. I think if you ask 15-year-old Khalifa, I'll probably be in the US now playing in the World Cup.
Very good.
I think that's what I would have been to at that time as a fan of sports and athletics in general. But I think the common denominator was I was always interested in how the UAE developed, us having a front row seat to it as children, and then moving beyond that, seeing the pace of change and it being tangible in front of us, how the country grew, the economy grew, the impact that it's had on its people. Watching businesses evolve, projects materializing. I think that steers a lot of us, and I think it steered me personally to look at what does this mean from a career perspective, and I think it crystallizes as the formation of an enterprise, the formation of a business, and I think that was sort of my door into the business world, and one step after the other, I think it leads you into studying what business is and understanding what companies are in your own home turf and globally. But I think the common characteristic that I would say that I had in myself that probably is an essential component of the investment world is being curious.
Oh wow!
And looking at business, understanding how they're built, how they're formed. How are they sustainable? How do they grow and have that longevity over the years? So I think that attracted me and that excited me. So I'm glad I found something that I could call as a career that I'm actually genuinely interested in and passionate about now.
That's amazing, and you've obviously had great success doing that. How has that curiosity sort of materialized through your work at Mubadala? What has it taught you about successful businesses?
I was fortunate to be in a great institution that exposed a generation of young Emiratis at the time to bringing the world much closer to us, and that bridge was investments and investing into those companies that allow us to explore the world and partner up with companies and look at companies and screen companies over many years. So I think that gateway was critical from widening, your aperture and be able to digest and ingest as much as you can from what does the world of business looks like in the emerging markets. And then you start comparing that to your own market. And then you look at how does that compare versus the more established, mature, developed markets. So as a result of that, I think you start developing what I would call a little bit of a pattern recognition. Now, you can't over-rely also on pattern recognition, but I think it's the more you see, the more you know.
Yeah.
So that's just the natural churn of, becoming an investor. You just have to always be continuously churning and learning more. So I think that was critical and quite important, and taking that in and where have I seen this before? Has it worked? Why didn't it work? What kind of decisions were made? So these are all valuable I would say factors that we picked up as growing and investors as we're becoming investors in the UAE.
It's fascinating that you say about pattern recognition. I mean, just want to touch on that a little bit. Obviously, the data for the UAE is 80, 90 years old. It's an emerging market. It's not as old as some markets across the planet. How do you navigate potentially having less information about businesses that you're potentially going to invest in versus ones that are slightly more mature?
You always want more information. That's going to be, even if you have an abundance amount of information, you want more and know more and learn more. And actually, that's probably where one of the critical, I would say, judgment calls that need to happen for you as an investor is to say, when when do I need to know more and what is enough?
Okay.
And is that enough for me to make a decision on? So, of course, it is something that we have to keep in mind over here. But, the fact that we all come from different experiences, we have seen a lot, we're able to triangulate. Sometimes you don't have all the pieces of the puzzle right in front of you, but there is enough for you to extrapolate and to make sense of the kind of decisions that you have to make. And so in the UAE, yes, we don't have an infinite amount of data, maybe on some companies, and especially because a lot of companies are actually private. And some of these private companies are actually family businesses.
Yes,
so that even makes it even more opaque.
Yeah.
But that's where the element of relationship is actually coming in, right? And that's where probably a lot of our work already starts way before an investment is ever made, is building that relationship with founders and businesses.
Yeah.
And that happens even in the most established, most mature, most data-rich nation out there. Because without that connection and without that goodwill that you're going to develop with your partners, it's hard to make the final investment decision. You will never make it without the relationship.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point, right? Because you can probably see in more mature markets where, you've got vastly more companies, vastly more investment going in than perhaps you have here. But it might perhaps be very, very data-driven. There might be a bias to going towards the numbers rather than actually, having a look under the hood, looking at the CEO, looking at the board, looking at how the company actually functions, and, getting a better sense from, proximity of how that company actually runs so that you can invest in it.
Correct. And I think that's what you would need post-investment. That's going to be the fabric that actually is going to be surviving. And if you don't have it, how much is data going to really be helpful for you?
Yeah.
Data is complementary. At the end of the day, the tough conversations that you're going to be having are going to be on a one-on-one basis.
I remember Warren Buffett said that he doesn't go to the balance sheet straight away. First thing that he does when he's interested in looking at a company is goes in and he interviews all of the leadership layer and the layer beneath. Because then he has a very good understanding of how the business truly runs.
Yeah, because I think that's what probably fills in the colors on the palette, right? And on the canvas. Like that's what I think, the numbers will say something, but what do these numbers morph into how decision-making is happening within that company?
Yeah.
I think is where the alpha is, right? I think, we are in an environment where a lot of companies have similar resources, similar inputs, even to some extent, maybe some vision that is shared between them. But it's a decision-making that is made along the way. Where do you invest and where do you bet and where do you stack your chips on at a specific, point in time is what probably dictates the direction and trajectory different companies have versus each other. So I think it's very important. I think, especially when things are going not too well. I think that's where relationships and partnerships I have seen with my own eyes is that ability for you to pick up the phone and what is really happening?
Yeah.
What can we do about this? If you're just sitting passively relying on your monthly packs and your quarterly packs, you just don't have the leverage and the goodwill to actually pick up the phone.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to get information as fast as you want.
Yeah.
Right? Companies are sometimes protective of information unless they feel comfortable with you. But they're able to sort of send over that pack and talk openly. And the best companies are generally the companies that are honest about what they're not doing well. That's what we are here for, effectively as investors, is to help steer and manage during the moments of difficulty too, not just when things are going very well.
That's fascinating insight. I think zooming out slightly, so you're obviously in the business of investing in companies. How do you see the UAE market over the past sort of 10 years or so? Obviously, we've had peaks and we've had troughs. How do you see the venture capital world?
Well, I mean, take even a step back. I would say this is probably one of the few, if not the only, just based on my personal experience, markets where you get this unique marriage between policy and capital moving at the same pace, at the same trajectory. And that's why I think we see all of this around us. And that has been a relentless attribute and characteristic of our economy since I was born, probably even before that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the core element that we all are circled around and working towards, knowing that we can take that for granted and we can rely on it because that's what will help us make the decisions that we need to do, the investments that we need to make. So that's a pillar of our economy. The startup, the venture world, you specifically asked me about the venture world. I think we've had an awakening of the startup environment over here in the UAE, at least in a newer version of it. There's been business and enterprise set up in the UAE from day one, but I think now we have a different way that it's packaged, and it's consistent with the global markets. Founders that want to build their own businesses and they want to go out and raise capital. I don't think they were able to do this as recently as 20 years ago. The facilities and the access just wasn't there.
And the ecosystem.
Just wasn't there.
Yeah.
That has now been created. So we've had a vintage now. We've had a vintage and a half probably of founders going out, and now they can access early stage capital through many vehicles, many of our partners that provide the $1 to $10 million check to help these businesses go from an idea to now, finding a product market fit in the UAE market. So that's now currently there. So that, I would say, when it comes to that, I think, the train is off, and I think now is where we come in.
Yeah.
This is where I think EGF's and the Emirates Growth Fund's role is to come in as now the next part of the capital stack that needs to be unlocked like it was unlocked 20 years ago is that growth capital.
Yeah.
How do you take these companies from being small, young companies, founder-led, to the next stage, which gets you the private equity or the maturity or the scale that, it becomes really what we like to call internally as a national champion.
Amazing. I mean, so let's just go into Emirates Growth Fund, particularly, right? I think from my research in particular, you talk about this missing middle.
Yeah.
So can you talk us through exactly what the missing middle is and the different stages of growth that are supported by Emirates Growth Fund?
So the missing middle, I mean, we just mentioned it. So the missing middle really are these. So we have, think about it as the early stage venture businesses. And I think that business exists in the UAE now. If you look at the complete other side of the spectrum, you have the sovereigns, you have the institutional investors, the platforms that are signing 100, 200, if not even more $1 million checks per deal. Where we operate is really this middle gap.
Okay.
Right? And this could be defined in many ways. It could be defined as the mid-market. It could be defined as, early growth, early PE growth. We can find the right lexicon to use over here. But the mid-market, the missing middle gap is real. And that, for me, is probably the most illuminating point when I look at our mandate. And personally, why I'm very excited about what a nice problem to have and to solve. These are companies that are generally, and that's what we look at. These are companies that, these are not companies that are just starting up. These are companies that are proven. They have product market fit. They've already started generating revenues. We will probably look at anyone that generates anywhere north of 10 million dirhams. Profitable, great. If not, how are you going to be profitable is something that we look at. So these are companies that are not very early, but they're not too mature.
Okay.
And the way I like to look at it is, really three things, really just simple criteria. Is this business currently working? That's number one. Number two, what would my capital and my investment help unlock in this business? And how high is the ceiling for this company? These are the three questions that I ask, or we ask as a team, as we look, is this a missing middle candidate for us?
So I think the question that comes to my mind is, if these are already successful companies, they're growing at least, why are they struggling to get funding? And difficult question coming from somebody who works for a bank, because obviously we lend to businesses of all size.
I don't think it's necessarily difficult. I mean, the data says that it is difficult, right? But I think it's also, it's multiple variables that play into why that is the case. I think one, if I was to look at the founders for a second, founders have evolved in the way that they think also about their businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, maybe they thought, yeah, I'll raise debt and I'll pay it back. I'll raise debt, I'll pay it back.
Sure, yeah.
And that's it. But that's what really equity and the equity market unlocks. Like, I think that's and we're part of this education. So I see us also part of the community that's educating the market on what this equity check really looks like, besides just the capital. And I think founders now are evolving and they're thinking, you know what, I now think 10x about my business. And that's the third question that I was saying when I look at any business, when I'm underwriting, is how far is that ceiling? That is usually fueled by the founder's vision. That imagination has dramatically evolved within the founder community, because founders want to continue building what they're passionate about now. So that is a very important thing. So there, you're seeing a lot more of that versus what you were seeing many years ago. Number two, I think, is the investment ecosystem. There hasn't been a lot of equity partners that operate at that stage or that early stage part of the ecosystem. As I mentioned, we just recently had it less than 20 years ago, over the course of the early stage cycle of companies, which is investors willing to take the risk in early stage companies that could return capital, and with a very likelihood that it might not return capital.
Yeah.
Right? So that investment attitude and risk tolerance has also been born in our nation. Now is okay, the continuity, the passing on the baton. Okay, now we've got some companies that have passed that stage, and that, all right, I think that's the genuine forward-looking environment that we live in. We, as a sovereign, as a nation, we understood we need to solve this part of the capital stack that takes these graduating companies onto the next part of their evolution, which is the growth capital, which is what we're doing. If I look at our market today, there's not a lot of anchoring players actually doing it today, day in, day out. And that's what the market needs. For you to have that vision from day one, you need to know that somebody is going to meet you at some point down the road. And I think by somebody existing, as somebody being anchored into the market as a sovereign-backed entity such as ours, that vision goes from, I'm just going to keep it simple, to actually, I do want to have bigger ambitions for my business. I want to get there.
And it's an amazing service you provide, right? Because it's not just the capital, right?
Absolutely.
You provide advisory and services to the business. Could you talk a bit more about that side?
Yeah. So these kind of companies, I think, once you scale,
the easy part.
Once you scale, a lot of things that you will not have done voluntarily are being demanded of you, which is what? Talent upgrades, board and governance, full clarity on how you're going to deploy your capital, business plans being built up and being refined all the time. These are things that if you were just a small shop, you won't bother doing that. You just act out of instinct and
or you've been so busy getting it off the ground and growing that you don't particularly have chance to think about all of the corporate governance side of things,
or the brilliance of the founder, right? So these are the kinds of things that are not really demanded of you before you scale. When you scale, it's not an option. Now, it's not bad news only, right? This is all a lot of work for founders. They got to do all this. They got to think about their business, and it's distracting sometimes for them. And I think that's where some of the challenges also come for why companies scale versus not scale. But on the other side, there's an opportunity. And that opportunity is, when you think about scale, all of a sudden you're entering into a realm that you could never have imagined when you're just a small company. And a small company can complain, I'm not able to lock in these contracts, or I'm not able to engage with this client or this enterprise. Well, because that size, at that scale, at that conglomerate level, they need a level of maturity and scale before they start engaging with you. So scaling really is an entry ticket to securing business from the bigger companies. And that is for you to make that transition, you have to scale. So it's not only bad news. There is some silver lining to all of this. And I think that's where the opportunity is for scale. I think, and it needs to be completely intertwined with the founder's vision. So what we like to do, just to answer your question specifically, what we would like to do is to be that partner that, essentially, once we invest capital, that's the first thing that we do. But what we do after that is really the majority of our work. One, they inherit our entire relationship base.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's on day one. That's what we unlock. That's what we promise them, and that's what we aim to work towards helping them out. Number two, we think strategically with them about what does value creation really look like. Let's go through, first of all, let's set up the governance of this organization. Let's set up the board. Let's install the right independent or a chairman position within the board, and just augment beyond just us as investors and founders, but somebody else that has done this before.
Yeah.
How do we think about the future of this business? And what comes out of that from those conversations, usually on the first 100 days, is a diagnosis of what is this business currently facing as opportunities and risks, and how do we work it? So they get a consulting team from our side.
Have there been difficult conversations as part of that activity? Because obviously founders are going to be very protective about their company and it's their baby, right? And then they're going to have this supporting arm of the growth fund coming in saying, here's how to get to the next level. How do you manage those kind of conversations?
Well, I think the founders typically take assurance in the fact that we are never a control investor. We're a minority equity investor.
Amazing.
So we take a partial sleeve of the company's ownership, but we act way more than we will always support and do more than what our stake represents, really. It becomes, we're partners now in this business. Difficult conversations are going to happen all the time. There's just, this is not, I mean, I think if there's no difficult conversation, something is wrong.
Yeah.
So difficult conversations happen, but we come in with the attitude that, one, we're here to help you, first of all. And then number two, I think also the founders take assurance from the fact that we're a sovereign-backed entity. We're a government fund.
I certainly would feel assured.
Yeah, I mean, we're here to actually serve, and we have a bigger purpose, right? So I think they feel much more comfortable with that fact. So the conversations will be challenging to where different points of view are there, and we have to find a middle ground, but it's never coming from a place where there's distrust, I would say. These are not situations that we're facing or we expect to face, just given the characteristics of our fund. And these conversations have been fruitful. And I think eventually with time, founders that did not see, what we were trying to sort of suggest from the first instance, I think at the second and the third instance, start understanding, appreciating, okay, this is actually worth our time into considering. This is actually a good idea. And I've seen it already, even though we're 1 year old, I've already seen it manifest and play into some of our existing portfolio companies.
Amazing. And obviously providing that level of support to businesses, you can't invest in all areas. Do you focus on particular industries, Emirates Growth Fund?
Yeah, I think we are looking at the SME category, number one. SME being small to medium enterprises, where really that's where the growth check makes sense. It doesn't make sense to do a growth check in a large enterprise. It's going to be $100+ million. So that SME category, if we look at the composition of that SME categories and who are these SME categories, you will notice that they are in the food industry, they are in the manufacturing industry, they are in the technology space, and then they are in the healthcare space. So these are what I would say our core sectors, but we are a little bit more flexible in terms of what else is there on the peripherals of that are true to other important principles that we care about. We look for attractive businesses that are UE stories, that are growing, that have the ambition, that are founder-led, and that our capital and our support will create value. These are the investing principles. Most of them happen to be in these sectors anyways, because they're predominantly made up of these sectors. These are the sectors that are in the SME category. But not only that, they are also the sectors that really the fulfillment of made in the UAE can materialize. These are core sectors for the nation, especially in today's time where sovereignty is critical, supply chain resilience is critical. These are all the sectors that speak to those attributes.
And how important is the Made in Dubai story? When I think it was our first podcast where we interviewed Erica Doyle, she had a prediction that the UAE would, we've gone through this path of importing people and services and goods and creating a growing economy from that. And now we're going to start pushing out globally, not just to the UAE, but globally as well. How important is the story of UAE, self-made, self-contained in Emirates Growth Fund's story?
More than ever. But it's not a new thing. It's not a novel thing. There's been made in UAE since the founding of this country, right? I think where we're seeing it now, and the focus on is to trickle down towards the SME category. Is the SME category also having a stake in what is made in the UAE, and how does it grow out from the UAE market? It's happening. It's not a question of ambition or will or moment. It's happening, and the altitude keeps on rising and rising. More and more companies are selling abroad and are playing a role in shaping other economies and being contributors to other economies. So it is important for us. And I think ultimately this is probably going to be one of the things that we will look back on and we say, well, who did we help get to that stage? And who did we help get to that stage, but also fortify their position over the years? So I think it is important. I think more and more that we are committed to that cause, the more resilient our economy becomes, right? We think about healthcare, we think about manufacturing, we think about food. These are all critical sectors to our country's resilient ability to withstand pressure. So they are important because if you continue not becoming not made in UAE, you're exposed.
Yeah.
So we are also part of that ecosystem. We're not the only one solving it, of course. We are part of the task force, essentially, that is going towards actually strengthening that made in the UAE concept.
It's such a beautiful vision. And I was in our research, I looked at one of your most recent investments in Carney Store.
Yeah.
Can you talk us a bit through that deal and why you chose to select them as your most recent investment?
Look, the Carney Store, first of all, is in the food space.
Premium protein.
It's in the premium protein space, exactly, and that by itself is one of the reasons. It's in a part of the industry that has the support of tailwinds. It's a growing part of the industry.
Yeah.
The premium protein space. Putting aside the attractiveness of the business model, and putting aside the attractiveness of the financials of the business, again, it's about the founders and the vision of the founders and their dreams to build the business and to create a homegrown UAE story.
Yeah,
and a very different one and a very unconventional business to actually say out loud. This is I don't think they've built a very normal business. They built a very unique business.
Yeah.
And that's part of the alpha that we look for. And that's the kind of things that we try to sniff out when we look at investment opportunities. And that exists in the founders and in this company's brand specifically. So that was an exciting, interesting investment for us to do. And we're excited about, supporting the team as they continue growing. But I would say it was also, it took place at a time that I think we also needed to send a signal out to the market that as the Emirates Growth Fund, we're out here to support our businesses because we closed the transaction in the middle of the conflict.
I saw that. So I think it was March 2026. We're filming this in the summer, so we're in July now. But to have that level of investment on a growing UAE based company in the middle of a crisis in the region.
Yeah, I mean, but that's going to be our DNA. When term sheet is going to be pulled out, and that's what happens in situations like this. The whole point of a sovereign-backed entity is to stick its neck out to support these businesses. So we looked at fundamentals. We're a fundamentally driven investor where we have a clear thesis, and businesses will always have noise. They will always have challenges. The whole point is how do you support a team during these moments of challenges, and how do they emerge out of it? And I think there was enough for us to see in the Carney Store transaction and team that they will be able to be just fine. So for us, there was never a second thought about whether we will finalize or close this transaction or not.
It's unique to the region, right? Then we think very similarly at Rakbank. So during the crisis, we didn't close lending.
Yeah,
I think a lot of banks had nervousness about lending to small to medium-sized enterprises. We booked 1.4 billion in lending to small businesses during the crisis. We didn't shut our doors. We were open for business the whole time.
Yeah.
I think having that kind of camaraderie or backing is incredibly important to businesses, particularly in times of disruption as well.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things. I mean, it goes back to one of the first things I mentioned, which is, we are truly lucky to have clarity on a forward-looking basis.
Absolutely.
Where policy and capital are just locked in together. This is, I mean, what I'm doing, what Rakbank is doing, it's a similar thing. So I think that clear direction on playing a role and supporting our companies is untouchable, and that will be the case. for us at the Emirates Growth Fund. And if it wasn't the case for us as a sovereign back, then I think I'll struggle what are we then really there for. So I think it was good timing, but it was always fundamentally driven. We had conviction and belief behind the business.
Sort of having a more forward looking view, what is your vision for Emirates Growth Fund over the next 5 years?
I think we're catalyzing the industry.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I'm genuinely very interested about is the role that the Emirates Growth Fund will play in catalyzing the industry in a much needed capital hungry mid-market.
Mm-hmm.
And I think over the years, as we keep on building and investing, I think the level of confidence and interest in what this mid-market is and how it shapes up becomes interesting to even bigger players down the line.
Okay.
So that's going to be one of the things that we will be. And that's what I mean by catalyzing the industry. But it doesn't just stop there. I think catalyzing the industry also means, have we also created an asset class that didn't exist before?
Okay.
So it becomes a new asset class. It becomes an asset class that new investors that didn't know they had access to it, now they know they have access to it, which is the growth stage part of the capital stack. Third, I think is also a unique outcome for us will be, and this is on the wider value impact that we would have. We'll be working with companies that all of a sudden thought this much and all of a sudden think this much. And I think we'll be in that journey.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, all of a sudden you're starting to graduate CEOs, COOs, CFOs that have now been in the journey of building a small company into a mid-market company. And all of a sudden they're going into a larger company. So we're also helping graduating a generation of potential talent that now have seen businesses being built up over time. So I think that's also quite a interesting outcome for the fund. At the end of the day, I think watching and looking back a couple of years from now and realizing that we have taken some companies from this size to that size and them eventually graduating and becoming national champions, I think will be the biggest testament for the fund that we've played our part and we have helped these builders into that stage.
No, it's an amazing vision, and I think it's something particularly unique to the UAE, right? So in other jurisdictions, in the US and in the UK or Europe, you don't get this sense that the government is having this level of connectedness to that effort. They might remove a roadblock here and there, but this is very personal, it seems, to the UAE and its leadership to support businesses at this level, so the whole economy and businesses can prosper.
Yeah, and we're fortunate to have this backing. And I certainly feel it, and my team certainly feels from our wider, principals and stakeholders. But it's not new. It's not new to the UAE. I mean, the UAE has been on a journey of growth, for as long as we can remember. And I think we've always been forward-looking. The creation of the Emirates Growth Fund is is one of those derivatives of that vision, right?
Yeah.
The UAE went from an economy that is 50% reliant on oil to close to 80% in the span of 30 years.
Yeah.
When we think about the SME category, and I think that's probably now the next interesting bits of challenges. Well, how does the SME market play a bigger role than it currently is, right? And why is that important? I think why this is an interesting problem is, let's look at the SME category. More than 90% of all companies that operate out in the UAE, and these figures better than I do, are in the SME category.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? They're the largest share of private workforce employers in our nation. That scale has a lot of value to unlock. And I think we are going to be one of the funds and one of the parties that helps unlock that scale in the UAE over the next 5 to 10 years.
And I think that's where the feeling kind of comes from, where a significant portion of the economy is run in the startup mode, right? You come here, you believe that you have an idea, you believe that you can do it here, you have the customers, everybody in that ecosystem wants you to succeed. Not just the founders,
right.
but from the trade license authorities that want to give
Yes.
you a trade license, to the banks that want to give you a bank account and that starter credit and that starter loan, and Emirates Growth Fund who are then picking you up when you're ready for that next stage.
And that's why
All
also people want to help the Emirates Growth Fund,
Mm.
because we're a government-backed entity ourselves. The wider ecosystem actually wants us to win and wants us to help. So I think, we're very lucky. And, you just mentioned how the economy is sending signals out to the SMEs. I mean, we
Yeah.
just heard it as recently as, maybe a month ago or 2 months ago at the Make It in the Emirates, when we heard Dr. Sultan Al Jaber, the Minister of Industry and Advanced Technology, mentioning that ADNOC is going to announce 200 billion dirhams worth of procurement awards. I mean, that's what I meant by anchored demand, right? That's what I meant by you already know, what the signal and what the market is. You need to activate it. You need to go after it. But how do you get to that? The scale.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get it if you're a subscale business. For these large organizations to, seriously consider you in that sense. That's probably where some of the challenges are. And it might take a lot of, other support for them to, be considered.
Yeah.
But I think that's what I mean. I think we get that clear, and we get these messages directly from the market, these signals. And I think that's where the SMEs need to tap into.
When you see that and you realize you can go for it, you have confidence that your idea can contribute to that. How then would you advise an SME that's in its growth mode that it would be ready to approach Emirates Growth Fund? How does one approach Emirates Growth Fund?
It shouldn't be hard at all.
You pick up the phone.
Should be very easy. I think we're an approachable fund, and I think we're doing a lot to actually build the bridges to make it easier for folks to reach out to us.
Mm-hmm.
But to answer your question, companies that have a clear plan on what they want growth capital for is probably one of the first things.
Sure.
That clear deployment plan, and articulating that is essential.
Mm-hmm.
The problem sometimes one of the things that we look at in the founder's ability to articulate what this capital is needed for is probably one of the top 3 things that we look for.
Okay.
There's no confusion around it. There's absolute clarity of what this capital is doing. And that goes back to the criteria I mentioned, which is this business working? And then number 2, what does this capital actually unlock?
Mm-hmm.
That number 2 part has to be absolutely crystal clear.
What are the top 2 or 3 things that you would deploy this kind of capital towards? What do you see most?
What do you mean? Like sectors specifically, or
like within the business?
Right.
I want to use this capital.
Yeah.
Is it on hiring? Is it on
Classic.
technology? Is it on AI tokens?
Yeah, classic things that we hear about is capacity. I have a backlog of commitments that I'm unable to meet because I'm capped with capacity restrictions, or then it could be team. I need 5 more salespeople to actually convert these leads. It could be expansion into new markets. These are typically the things that's where growth capital is sort of built around. Is fuel to support where there is strong conviction that things are working.
Yeah.
This is not random bets.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Amazing. So I'd be remiss to ask, how is AI impacting your industry? Is it helping? And what stages is it helping you either assess or support the businesses?
I mean, if you ask me next week, I'll probably have a different answer. I'm pretty sure you also feel the same.
Yes.
We all feel the same in this constantly changing world of what AI really is. But I mean, I know that this technology is real. I'm pretty sure we've all reached this stage now, especially once you have parents that now delegate to ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Right. Like we're at that stage. So this is not going anywhere. So to translate this to our business, first of all, internally at EGF is how do we adopt it? So I think we're well on our way to building the right best practices in that sense. But not to speak about us, when I'm looking at the businesses that we get into, I think I'll struggle to see any business that's not adopting it. I think I would look at that with a question mark in my head.
Yeah.
Now, you don't have to have an absolute transformation on day one, because even that world is changing.
Of course.
But at least have they started inviting the conversations and the dialogue of what does this really mean to us? Because I think in 10 to 15, 20 years time, even if it's a healthcare business, even if it's a food business, they're also technology businesses.
Of course. Everything is now.
Correct. So if they're not having these conversations, if there is not some view on what this means to them, I would see this as a question mark. Like, why not? So
because it speaks to capacity, right?
You will unlock that capacity that you were capped with.
Yeah.
I mean, if for companies that are doing it well, there are clear data points that there are percentage points of improvements on utility, on utilization, on capacity, whatever it is, on any workflow. At least it gives you some of your time back.
Yes.
At the bare minimum.
Yeah, I think internally we're taking it very cautiously. Obviously, we're a regulated entity. We can't just plaster AI over everything.
Correct.
We have
has to be done cautiously.
Yeah, we have customers' data that we need to protect. But obviously, as a head of digital, the way that we're doing things is consistently and evolving every single day with this new technology. Applying that to our business is now where the secret sauce is. Can I write code? Can I develop product papers based on this type of technology? These are skills that I think are very, very important to businesses, and what we're helping our SMEs through to understand as we go through this journey.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it walking into your floor. You guys are actively looking at this, and I think it's the right way of thinking about it for sure.
Amazing. So in terms of national outreach, what things are Emirates Growth Fund doing to differentiate itself versus more traditional funds of its kind?
Yeah, you asked me earlier, how are we engaging with our market, and really where is maybe some of the unique differences that EGF today has. I'll pick on one approach. So we and the Make It in the Emirates, we announced a trilateral partnership between us, the Ministry of Industry and Technology, as well as the Ministry of Economy and Tourism. So that's like
the three heavy hitters.
Yeah, sort of exactly. And I think that, we have the capability to convene, and we're able to translate policy language into business and investment decisions. So I think that's one of the unique things. But what we agreed amongst the three of us as a part of a wider roundtable discussion was the need to create a program of sort, and we've labeled it the National Champions Program, where we're able to engage with the market and inform them about a wider program that we're creating to invite them to actually pitch to us.
Okay.
Right. And to tap into those ministries for wider support, and that's the value creation component. What it does is really a couple of things. It accelerates that journey for companies to get closer to these principles.
Sure.
Number two, it allows us to identify interesting companies that we could potentially invest in. And then three, build what I would say an outlet for these companies, especially in markets where they're not commonly associated with a fast capital raising environment.
Okay.
And that's also part of our story, is that we also want to go into like family businesses. Family businesses are not used to coming out and we need $10 million, we need $20 million.
Yeah.
Or they might do it on their own, or they might go to a bank, as you previously said. But creating that environment, this outlet, facilitates that conversation.
Yeah.
So I think it's a unique way for us to source opportunities for EGF and to help us identify what we believe are hidden gems in the rough.
And how is it conducted? Is it running a hackathon or a pitch style format?
It's there's
a series of days, or
so we should find information about it on our social media outlets. But essentially, there's a call out and there's an application process that hopefully should be very easy. A compilation of data that we would ask just to measure scale and exactly are we looking at the companies that we are that fit our mandate. And then organizations will then lead towards them presenting to us and being part of a wider workshop that will be available to everyone, where we would talk about the principles of investing. What are the important things that investors care about?
Yeah.
What does value creation look like? What are some of the decisions that you make? What is the ingredients of a deal typically are built around?
So it's not just one way. It's not just them pitching to you. It's a two-way.
It's an education process. And that's what I said. We front load this because what we want is, even if there's no conversation today,
Mm.
that in 12 months' time, that company has learned a little bit more about what the Emirates Growth Fund is, has prepared itself better for a conversation with the Emirates Growth Fund, and then that could lead to a real conversation about what a minority equity investment would look like.
And it can almost go into that future conversation with a badge saying, I've cut my teeth here, I've had education, I've gone through this series, and that will come with a certain amount of weight for that business.
And that's one more thing that I'll add to the list of, if we look back in 10 years' time, we realize we've done well. We created a playbook.
Yeah.
We've created a playbook for investors to look into companies, but also for companies to realize, okay, these are the things I need to install or build around my company for a future capital raise.
Amazing. Your Excellency, it's been an absolute
Thank you.
pleasure
Thank you,
speaking to
Tom,
you.
for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for spending time with us.
Thank you.